So, how is real, lasting wealth actually built? I mean, is it all about high-flying tech stocks and flashy lifestyles? Or is there a quieter, more powerful story hiding right there in plain sight? All right, let's dive into this because we're going to uncover the principles that connect some of the most unlikely millionaires to the world's most powerful corporations.
I mean, it's a fascinating question to ask yourself, isn't it? Because the truth is, some of the biggest fortunes out there have been built by people you would absolutely never suspect. They are the secret millionaires, living these totally humble lives while quietly building extraordinary wealth. Okay, let's take Ronald Reed, for example. For most of his life, he worked as a gas station attendant and a janitor at JCPenney. He drove a beat-up old Toyota Yaris, and get this, he famously used safety pins to hold his old coat together so he wouldn't have to buy a new one. Just a simple, frugal guy from Vermont. But when he passed away, this humble janitor left behind a staggering $8 million fortune. So how did he do it? It wasn't a lottery ticket. It was just decades of patient investing in solid blue-chip stocks that he actually understood, all while living a life of incredible simplicity. Or how about Sylvia Bloom? For 67 years, she worked as a legal secretary in Manhattan. Every single day, she commuted on public transport, even through blizzards. To everyone who knew her, she was just a dedicated, hardworking woman from Brooklyn. Well, her little secret was a fortune of over $9 million. And her method was so simple, it's brilliant. Whenever her boss would buy a certain stock, she would just quietly buy a smaller amount of the very same stock for herself. She just saved, she invested, and she did it consistently for over 6 decades. You know, the really wild part is that Ronald, Sylvia, and so many others just like them were all following the same unwritten code. And it's not complex at all. You live simply, way below your means. You save relentlessly. You invest patiently for a very long time in things you actually understand, and you always, always reinvest the dividends. It's this quiet but incredibly powerful formula.
So that kind of makes you wonder, right? What happens when you take these exact same principles? Patience, consistency, long-term thinking, and you don't just apply them to a personal salary, but you apply them to a massive corporate engine. Well, you get something that looks a lot like Berkshire Hathaway.
And the results are just absolutely mind-bending. This quote really says it all. It shows you the sheer power of this long-term game. And just like Ronald Reed, Berkshire Hathaway famously doesn't pay dividends. It reinvests pretty much everything right back into the business, just letting that value compound year after year after year. So what's the secret sauce here? Well, the engine behind Berkshire's success is a concept called insurance float. Now, I know that sounds pretty technical, but trust me, it's beautifully simple. Insurance companies collect premiums from you today for accidents that might happen months or even years from now. That giant pool of money they get to hold on to in the meantime? Yep, that's the float. And this is where the genius comes in. Berkshire gets to use this massive multi-billion-dollar pool of cash, which is basically a giant interest-free loan from its customers, to go out and invest and generate even more profits for itself. By 2022, that float was up to $147 billion. It's the exact same principle as our secret millionaires, just on a scale that is almost impossible to wrap your head around. But look, building wealth isn't just about saving and investing. The true masters of the game, they see value where other people don't. You could almost call it a superpower. They see the hidden assets. Just look at Marvel Entertainment. Back in 1996, they were bankrupt, totally. Their value was seen as just, comic books and some collectibles. But Disney saw something totally different. They saw a hidden asset, a treasure trove of incredible characters and decades of interwoven storylines. They didn't buy a comic book company. They bought a whole universe. And boy, did that pay off. This chart shows it all. By unlocking that hidden universe, Disney made profits just from the movies that were more than 3 times what they paid for the entire company. They literally turned something intangible, stories, into billions of dollars in cold hard cash. This whole game of finding hidden value and building immense wealth isn't new at all. In fact, you could argue the original playbook was written 400 years ago by a company that operated on an even grander scale, the Dutch East India Company, also known as the VOC. And the parallels to a company like Berkshire are just striking. The VOC dominated the global spice trade, sure, but its power was literal. This was basically a company that acted like a country. It had its own armies, its own colonies, it could wage war. At its peak in the 1600s, it was the wealthiest private company the world had ever seen. Period.
For nearly 200 years, the VOC was just this unstoppable force. It paid out an average dividend of 18% a year. It seemed completely invincible. But as you can see here, even the biggest giants can come crashing down. And its fall, well, that holds the final and most crucial lesson in our whole story. So what on earth could bring down the most powerful corporation in history? Well, it wasn't one single event. It was a slow, quiet decay that happened from the inside out.
The VOC's core principles just completely eroded. Corruption became so widespread that VOC became a Dutch joke for perished under corruption. The whole thing became inefficient and bloated. And here's the real killer. It started paying out dividends it wasn't actually earning, basically eating away at its own capital. It forgot the most fundamental rule of all. You can't spend more than you make.
So, from a frugal janitor in Vermont to a globe-spanning empire, what are the timeless rules that connect all of these incredible stories? Well, first, it's that patience is power. That decades-long discipline of Ronald Read and Berkshire Hathaway, it always wins. Second, you have to see the unseen. The greatest value, like Marvel's universe of stories, is often hidden right in front of you. Third, principles outlast scale. The VOC proves that growth without integrity is just a house of cards. And finally, the bedrock of it all, live below your means. It's the one rule that makes everything else possible. Which brings us to the final most important question. These principles are absolutely timeless. The janitor, the secretary, the legendary investor, and the cautionary tale of a fallen empire, they all point to the very same truths. So as we look at the world around us right now, the real question is, where are the hidden assets of today?